Hello, welcome to Working Dragon Mystic, where we teach real metaphysical and occult knowledge so that you can manifest real, tangible change and results in your life. This week in our Urban Magic video, we're going to show how to make a multi-berry mead, so stay tuned. Okay, this week we're going to talk about how to make a multi-berry mead. A simple mead video was so popular, we got a lot of comments of people wanting to see more recipes. So, my wife wanted me to get on a multi-berry mead. This is one of her favorites. This one's actually, we made this back in December of 2017. We made a 5-gallon batch. So this one's been aging for a while. And we only have a few bottles left. So she wanted me to go ahead and make more before we ran out. I'm lucky to have a wife that supports my mead making. She actually done the label for my bottle there. It's replicated off of one of my tattoos that you all may have seen in the videos before. Now, there's a lot of different ways to do a melomel, which is what a fruit mead is. Some people like to put the fruit into the bucket straight away when you first get started. I've done that. We did that with a cranberry mead, and it came out really, really good. In fact, I'll have to share that recipe with you all. For the multi-berry mead, I tried a different technique that I saw on a homebrew forum. They actually fermented the mead and the sugars, and then at the end, when they were after the racking, they added the fruit in, so the sugars and flavors from the fruit would be far more forward. And knowing my wife likes the fruitier flavors, I tried that. So that's what we're going to be doing with this one. And this time around, we are going to be making a full giant fermenter. This is the 5-gallon fermenters I told you about. You can see the markings on the side here, and gives you plenty of headroom. Anytime I'm doing this, I actually fill this well above the 5-gallon mark. I actually try to get my water at least to this line or here. And that way, when we're racking and when we go to bottle, any of the loss that we end up with, I still am pretty guaranteed an almost perfect 5-gallon batch, or a little more even. Now, for honey this time, I went to Walmart. I actually saw this on a Mead forum that I'm on Reddit. And someone asked about it. A lot of people who's used it said it's great for melomels. And since, again, I'm not overly worried about the flavor of the honey when I'm making a fruit mead, I wanted to give this one a try. It wasn't expensive at all. I think I paid 11 or 12 bucks for a 5-pound thing. Now, we will be using 15 pounds of honey in this. So, I got 3 of them. Now, this is actually going to still be somewhat of a test for me, because when I made this recipe and originally tried it, the concept was 15 pounds of honey to the mixed fruit. When I went to buy my honey, I usually bought 3-pound jugs at Costco. So I just grabbed 5 of those and came home. I'd already gotten the mead started and it was fermenting before I realized that those 5 jugs that I got from Costco, they had upped from 3 to 5 pounds. So I ended up putting 25 pounds of honey in the first batch, which it didn't end up overly sweet, but the alcohol content was insane. I think this little bottle we got here, if I remember right, it finished somewhere around 21-23%, and honestly, it almost tastes like fruit juice. This is dangerous stuff. So, I'm wanting to go for a slightly lower alcohol content on this one. So we're going to be using the original 15 pounds that I estimated last time. And out of paranoia, I keep checking to make sure these do say 5. Now, getting this on is actually pretty much identical to what we did with the simple mead. We're just going bigger with it. So I'll go ahead and get the honey in, and I'll come back to you. I've already got everything over here sanitizing. So I'll get all the honey in. I won't bore you with that, and I'll come right back. Okay, we got the honey in, and I'm pouring out the last of the hot water to clean out the remainder of the honey from the jug. One thing I wanted to say about this honey is I bought it thinking it would just be clover honey. And looking at the jugs when I got home, I could not find clover honey listed anywheres. And looking at it, I still don't see anything to tell me what honey's in here. But online, I went and looked it up and tried to find out if anyone knew. And as best as I can figure, this is actually a blended honey. It's not one type or another. But when I opened it, I gave it a taste. This is really good honey. It's very sweet, very flavorful. Subtlety, it does not have. It is just honey. So, would I make a straight mead with this? I might. Again, I do a lot more mellow than anything because that's what me and my wife like to drink, and they're kind of fun. My simple meads, I do make those quite often as gifts and to use in my magic or during holiday celebrations. Though Yule's coming up, we're definitely going to be opening one of these aged bottles for Yule. But yeah, this is actually, so far, I'm liking this honey. It's not a bad price. It's easy to find. So, yeah, I'd probably buy this again. Alright, and as you can see, there's enough honey in there that we're almost up to the 3-gallon mark already with just the honey and water that we added. So you can see it doesn't take much to fill these up really quick. And you can also see why when I made the other one, I'm surprised I missed it, because you would think I would notice that my fermenter was half full or better with freaking honey. But when you're in a rush trying to do 5 different things in one day, and you don't take your time to enjoy your home brewing, that's what can happen. Though we did enjoy it when it finished. Now, this thing is huge. It will not fit under my sink. So I have 2 options for getting water into this. One is you can set it in your sink, and if you have a sprayer on your sink, you can utilize that. Though I won't lie to you, that is slow. You'll be standing there with that sprayer for 30 minutes. I'm not really that patient. So what I like to do is I like to get a water jug and transfer water that way. You can also just go ahead and buy the water at the store like we did with the Simple Mead and just dump that straight in. It works great. They were wiped out. We're in the South. Winter storms are coming, not to mention the holidays. The stores are picked clean. So we're going to just use my tap water here, which I'm lucky that where I live currently, the tap water is good. And it's never affected any of my meads we've made while we've been here. So I'll go ahead and get the water transferred over and get back with you. Okay, so we got 2 gallons of the water in here already. And the container is already to almost the 5-gallon mark. Now all our honey's settled on the bottom, and I want to go ahead and mix it up before I add any more water. The reason I do this is I have more room to stir more vigorously. And since I can't just shake the bejesus out of it like we did with the Simple Mead, and since I can't shake it and I have to stir it so vigorously, I want to make sure to take the time with this extra headroom that's on it to get the honey incorporated in really well. And try and stir real vigorously because you also want to try and incorporate a good amount of oxygen. Anyways, I wanted to let you know what I was doing. I'm going to go ahead and finish stirring this and top off the water, and I'll get back to you. Okay, welcome back. So we got our water in, everything's stirred up nicely, and we are well past the 5-gallon mark. I would say we're closing in on 6 gallons easy. I may have actually filled this up too much. Luckily I got plenty of room in my tub, so if I have any overflows, we'll be good to go. Now, one thing we are doing differently. Last time during the simple mead, if you remember, we used raisins to add some extra nutrients to the mead because we said honey, yeast has a hard time feeding on just it. Well, what I have here is called yeast nutrient. And I think I mentioned it in the other, if I can just get that clear up. There we go. And a tablespoon of this per gallon does the same thing that the raisins does. It does a little better job, and you also don't have to worry about filtering it out and all that other stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and add a few tablespoons of this. And before you ask, this is sanitized. Everything here has been sanitized. That is, when you're making mead, always sanitize everything. If you have a question of whether it needs to be sanitized, sanitize it. Now, what I actually like to do is I'll mix my sanitizer up in my fermenter, which, you know, this is cleaned up and everything, and even though it's cleaned, I still sanitize it. And I'll let this soak for 5-10 minutes with the sanitizer. Then I pour that sanitizer into a large bucket that I have over here. It's a brew kettle for brewing beer. And that's where I'll keep my tools and everything that are being for sanitizing while I'm doing everything else. It gives me a constant place to go back to, and I keep paper towels on hand that I can take a clean paper towel and dunk it in sanitizer if I need to. And honestly, I keep dunking my hands in the sanitizer too because I'm paranoid. But it makes good mead, so paranoia must be paying off for me. Now, the only thing left here is to pitch the yeast and get the gravity. So I'll go ahead and pull some of this off so we can get a gravity reading, and I'll be right back. Okay, welcome back. So we got the gravity. And for once, it actually makes it look like I know what I'm doing. So I was wanting to shoot for roughly a 14 to 13% alcohol by volume on this particular mead. And our gravity reading is showing 1.090. And the estimate on this is actually around 14 to 15% alcohol if everything ferments. So that's actually pretty good. That's not bad at all. And interesting little fact I learned, these lights I'm using to help light the kitchen up so it's not as dark as it was in the last video for racking the mead. Actually makes that a lot easier to read. So we got our gravity, and actually before I forget that, I need to go ahead and make a note because I need to write that down into the journal. Again, like I said, make sure you are keeping a journal so that you can track what you're putting into your recipes, when you're racking it, all those little things. It helps tremendously. Now again, we're going to do what I did last time, and I'm just going to pitch the yeast on top. Again, I've been having a lot of success with this. And we're going to go ahead and use the Lavalin. See if I can get this to focus. Yeah, there it is. We're using Lavalin 71B. It done a great job. That simple mead is looking great. So we're going to go ahead and just sprinkle that on the surface. And it'll slowly hydrate. And get our spoon or mixing paddle out. And then you want to get your lid on. Now, I do make sure my lids are sanitized and cleaned, just like I do everything else. But since they are one of the harder items to get into the sanitizer, I always like to give them a good wipe down. Like I mentioned, the paper towels, this is where the paper towel comes in. I like to drench it in sanitizer Don't wring it out. And then I just wipe down and let sanitizer fall everywhere. Over the sink, of course. And then just put your lid on. Now these lids, these are tight. Unlike the smaller fermenter I have, you don't really have to question whether this one's on. You could probably pick this whole fermenter up by the lid. And we do have a airlock sanitizing. And I'm going to actually go ahead and add sanitizer to the airlock. Get it where I need it. And then figure out how tight that is. We'll just get a little sanitizer on the bottom and work the airlock in. Okay, it's ready to go. Now, an update on the Simple Mead. Since we racked it, it actually has not moved. The bubbler has not moved at all. Now that could mean it's completely done. There's no fermentation happening and it is ready to bottle. So I need to take a gravity reading on that, which I will do. I don't think I'll film that because a gravity reading seems like a silly video. But if it is indeed ready to bottle, I'll be shooting that video very, very soon. And I'll show you how to bottle. Now my plan with that video is I'm going to show you different bottling options, including how you can do this right here yourself. And I just realized I forgot to put my sample back in. Oh well. No problem. Sometimes that happens. We got plenty in here as is already. Now, if you are worried about whether or not there's enough agitation, oxygen, or anything like that in your mead once you got your lid on and your sanitizer in, just give it a good shake. This will help mix up some oxygen, and it'll also help just get your yeast and your energizer mixed up in there too. And that is it. You are good to go. Now, like we said, take this and place it someplace in your house where you can store it and keep an eye on it. I should start seeing this fermenting and bubbling within 24 to 48 hours easy. Now, like I said, this process is very similar to the Simple Mead, and the reasoning for that is by letting it ferment and get all the sugars from this first, then we can rack it onto the fruit and let it absorb all those flavors without converting those flavors and stuff into alcohol. And that gives you a lot more fruit flavor. So it just gives you a slightly different flavor. If you like more fruit flavor, use this method. Now you could actually go ahead and add fruit into this, but it's also going to ferment a lot of the sugars in the fruit and pull some of that fruit flavor out, and it's going to have more of a wine-like flavor, which ain't bad. So you just got to try it both ways and figure out what your preference is. We prefer this method, and honestly I find it a little simpler because it's easier to measure out how much I'm making. Now, when you get ready to make this, what I do is I buy the mixed berry frozen fruit. And I usually get blackberry, blueberry, raspberry, strawberry, that kind of a mix. And frozen fruit is perfect. Even if you get fresh fruit, when you're making mead, you tend to want to freeze it, because freezing it, those ice crystals help break the cells of the fruit, so all the juice and everything can get into the wine or the mead. So save you some money and just hit the frozen food section and go ahead and grab the frozen ones, because they're frozen fresh, just as that peak of freshness. So if you grab them from frozen food section, you can easily just toss them in here. Now you will want to defrost them, but that's something we'll be talking about in the next video when we get ready to rack. Till then, I'm Drake, and this has been Working Dragon Mystic. Enjoy your brewing. See you next time.